Welcome to our deep dive today. Um, we're going to be going into some uncharted territory for a philosopher. We'll be exploring the realm of Sigmund Freud
Oh, yes.
and his groundbreaking work, 3 essays on the theory of sexuality.
Okay.
We'll be looking at excerpts from the 2021 Anna's Archive edition,
Right.
which offer a fascinating glimpse into Freud's ideas about, sexual development,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even challenge some philosophical assumptions about human nature.
Okay.
Now, to help us navigate these complex theories,
Mm-hmm.
I've got an expert on Freud with me today.
It's great to be here. Freud's ideas on sexuality were certainly revolutionary for their time, and they continue to spark debate and discussion even today.
Absolutely. Now, one concept I'm particularly curious about, and I imagine our philosopher listener is too, is infantile sexuality.
Mm.
It's a term that
Yeah.
can raise eyebrows
Yeah.
and even cause some discomfort.
Sure.
Can you break this down for us?
Yeah.
What did Freud really mean by this?
So Freud's concept of infantile sexuality
Yeah.
was truly groundbreaking, published in 1905.
Mm-hmm.
3 essays introduced the world to the idea that sexuality isn't something that
Right.
simply appears in adulthood.
Right.
And Freud argued that its roots can be traced back to infancy, challenging the conventional view of children as
Yeah.
innocent and asexual beings.
So it's not about
Right.
babies engaging in adult-like sexual activity.
Exactly.
Okay.
Freud was talking about something much
yeah.
more nuanced.
Yeah.
He observed that infants experience
Mhm.
pleasure and gratification through various parts of their bodies, what he called erogenous zones,
Yeah.
long before they reach puberty
Oh.
or have any concept of adult sexuality.
All right.
He saw behaviors like thumb-sucking and the pleasure infants derive from touch
Yeah.
as early manifestations of these instinctual drives.
That's fascinating. It raises these questions about
Mm-hmm.
the very nature of pleasure and desire. I mean, are these drives inherently sexual from the beginning?
Yeah.
Or do they become sexualized later on,
Right.
through experience and social conditioning?
Yeah.
This gets to the heart of the nature versus nurture debate,
Absolutely.
something philosophers have been grappling with for centuries.
And Freud's theories
Yeah.
complicate this debate
Right.
even further. He argued that these early experiences, even those we may not consciously remember,
Mhm.
lay the foundation for our later sexual development
Yeah.
and even influence our adult personalities
Yeah.
and relationships.
So even those seemingly innocent childhood experiences could have a
Right.
profound and lasting impact
Yeah.
on who we become.
That's what Freud proposed. And he went even further,
Yeah.
suggesting that these infantile impulses, if not properly integrated or channeled,
Uh-huh.
could lead to psychological disturbances
Okay.
later in life.
Now, that's a concept I'm sure our philosopher listener
Right.
is keen to explore.
Mm-hmm.
But before we dive into those,
Yeah.
darker aspects of Freud's theories,
Okay.
let's talk about one of his most famous
Mm-hmm.
and controversial concepts,
Yeah.
the Oedipus complex.
Yeah, right.
For a philosopher, this idea seems
Mm-hmm.
ripe with
Yeah.
symbolic and metaphorical meaning.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through it?
So the Oedipus complex, named after the Greek myth,
Right.
describes a stage of psychosexual development where a child, typically between the ages of 3 and 6,
Dope.
develops unconscious desires
Yeah.
for the parent of the opposite sex and feelings of rivalry with the parent of the same sex.
It's a concept that can feel a bit unsettling,
Yeah.
but I can see how it touches on those primal themes of,
Mm-hmm.
desire and rivalry
Right.
and the negotiation of familial relationships.
Absolutely.
These are all central to
Right.
the human experience
Right.
and have been explored in literature and philosophy
Yeah.
for centuries.
Precisely. And Freud believed that this complex,
Mhm.
while playing out in the unconscious mind,
Okay.
has a significant impact on later adult relationships
Mhm.
and psychological development.
So are you suggesting that our adult love lives are,
Mm-hmm.
to some extent, shaped?
That was
Yeah.
Freud's contention.
Okay.
He argued that we unconsciously seek out partners
Mm.
who share certain qualities
Right.
with our primary caregivers
Right.
based on these early attachments.
That's a fascinating
Yeah.
and provocative idea.
Yeah.
It suggests that our choices,
Mm-hmm.
even in love, might not be as free
Right.
or conscious as we think.
Yeah.
I'm already seeing how this could lead to some interesting philosophical discussions about
Absolutely.
free will and determinism and
Yeah.
the nature of selfhood.
And we're just
Yeah.
scratching the surface.
Yeah.
Freud's theories are
Yeah.
complex and multifaceted,
Right.
and they offer a unique lens
Yeah.
through which to examine
Yeah.
the human condition.
Speaking of complexities,
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that
Yeah.
Freud doesn't seem to give much attention
Right.
to female sexual development
Yeah.
in this material.
That's a valid criticism.
Yeah, did he have anything to say about
So
it?
Freud's theories were
Yeah.
primarily focused on male development,
Okay.
and his understanding of female sexuality was less developed. He briefly mentions that girls must undergo a process of repression to transition from a
Okay.
masculine phase of sexuality to a feminine one,
Okay.
renouncing their initial attachment to the mother and shifting their desires to the father.
That sounds rather limited,
And
even by
it's
the standards of his time.
and it's a perspective that
Yeah.
has been challenged and
I don't-
expanded upon by later feminist scholars
Yeah.
who offer more
Yeah.
nuanced and insightful understandings of female sexuality.
It's a reminder that even brilliant minds like Freud
Right.
were products of their time,
Yeah.
and that their work
Yeah.
should always be critically examined
Mm-hmm.
and contextualized. Now,
Okay.
before we move on to the next part of our deep dive,
Mm-hmm.
there's one more concept I'd like to unpack.
Okay.
Sublimation.
Okay.
Freud talks about
Yeah.
redirecting sexual energy towards
Right.
non-sexual goals,
Yeah.
like artistic creation.
Okay.
Can you elaborate on this idea?
So sublimation, in Freud's view,
Yeah.
is a defense mechanism.
Mm.
It's the process by which our psyches channel socially unacceptable impulses,
Right.
often of socially unacceptable activities.
Okay.
So think of like,
Think of artistic expression,
Yeah.
creativity, intellectual pursuits,
yeah,
even cultural achievements.
okay,
Freud saw these as examples of
yeah,
sublimated
yeah.
sexual energy.
So you're saying that our greatest works of art,
Yeah. Our scientific breakthroughs, our philosophical insights
is.
could all be traced back to
It is.
our repressed
It is.
sexual desires.
It is.
That's a rather radical idea.
And it raises some profound questions about the nature of creativity.
Right.
The motivations driving human endeavors.
Yeah.
And the complex interplay between our biological drives and
Yeah.
the constraints of society.
I see. So if our creative impulses
Yeah.
are rooted in
Yeah.
sublimated desires,
Yeah.
does that diminish their value or authenticity?
That's a
That's a fantastic question.
fantastic question.
And one that I'm sure our
Yeah.
philosopher listener will be pondering.
Yeah.
It challenges us to think about the relationship
Right.
between our primal urges
Mm-hmm.
and our higher aspirations,
Yeah.
and how these seemingly opposing forces
Exactly.
might actually be intertwined.
And it's just one of the many.
Yeah.
Fascinating
Yep.
and thought-provoking ideas we encounter when
Yeah.
we delve into the world of
Yeah.
Freudian thought.
Well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground
Yes.
in this first part of our deep dive,
Mm-hmm.
from infantile sexuality
Right.
to the Oedipus complex
Yeah.
and the concept of sublimation.
Yeah.
We've explored some of Freud's most
Mm-hmm.
groundbreaking and
Yeah.
challenging ideas.
Right.
I think it's safe to say
Yeah.
that our philosopher listener has been given a lot to contemplate.
Indeed. And there's much more to uncover as we
Yeah.
continue our exploration of
Yeah.
Freud's theories in the next part
Yeah.
of our deep dive. So, picking up where we left off, we've been talking about Freud's intricate theories on sexual development,
Right.
specifically how those, early,
Yeah.
even infantile experiences
Yeah.
can have such a significant impact
Yeah.
on who we become as adults.
And we've certainly encountered some thought-provoking concepts already.
Yeah.
Infantile sexuality,
Mm.
Oedipus complex,
Right.
the idea of sublimation. I imagine per philosopher listener is beginning to see how
Right.
these ideas, challenge these traditional views of
Yeah.
human nature and motivation.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious, what happens to
Yeah.
these infantile impulses
Yeah.
as we transition
Yeah.
into adulthood?
That's where puberty comes in.
Okay.
Freud saw puberty as a
Mm-hmm.
pivotal turning point
Yeah.
in psychosexual development.
Right.
It's when those early, diffuse impulses
Right.
become integrated and organized,
Uh-huh.
shifting from self-directed pleasure to what Freud called
Object love.
object. So this is about
Developing, romantic and sexual
exact
feelings for another person.
precisely. It's a shift from autoeroticism, the focus on self-gratification,
Right.
to a desire for connection and intimacy
Yeah.
with another.
Okay.
And while the genitals take center stage,
Yeah.
during puberty,
Hmm.
Freud believed that those
Yeah.
earlier erogenous zones we discussed
Right.
still play a
Yeah.
crucial
So
role.
those early experiences of pleasure don't simply vanish.
Not at all.
Okay.
They become part of what Freud termed for pleasure.
Okay.
The sensations and anticipations
Yeah.
that, build up to the main event,
Uh-huh.
so to speak.
Okay.
Those erogenous zones, the
Yeah.
lips, the skin,
Yeah.
even the eyes,
Yeah.
all contribute to the richness and complexity of
Right.
overall sexual experience.
It's like those early experiences are kind of woven into the fabric of our adult sexuality.
Right.
But I'm wondering, could there be a downside to this?
Freud argued that an overemphasis on forepleasure,
Okay.
a fixation on those preliminary gratifications
Yeah.
could actually hinder
Right.
the attainment of the
Yeah.
normal sexual aim. It's like getting lost in the prelude
Oh, I see.
and never reaching the climax
Okay.
of the symphony.
Yeah, I see. It's about balance then.
Right.
But how does this relate to those, variations
Okay.
in sexuality that we touched on earlier?
Freud believed that fixations,
Okay,
those
right.
lingering attachments to specific forms of gratification,
Right.
could lead to what he called perversions.
Okay.
He saw these as a kind of arrested development, a failure to fully integrate
Mm-hmm.
those infantile impulses
Right.
into a mature sexual life.
So instead of those impulses being, channeled
Exactly.
or sublimated,
Exactly.
they become
Yeah.
the dominant force, kind of driving the individual's
Exactly.
sexual behavior.
And Freud maintained that.
Yeah.
We all harbor these impulses,
Right.
these tendencies to perversion.
Right.
It's the journey of development,
Yeah.
the interplay of repression and sublimation
Yeah.
that ultimately shapes how those impulses are expressed.
That's a rather unsettling thought. It suggests that beneath the surface
Yeah.
of our fibrilized selves lies this world.
It does raise questions about the nature
Yeah.
of human nature itself. Are we
Right.
inherently driven by these base impulses?
Right.
Or are we capable of
Yeah.
transcending them through
Yeah.
reason and self-control? This is a question that philosophers have grappled with for centuries.
Right.
And Freud's theories certainly add another layer
Right.
to the debate.
Speaking of
Yeah.
driving forces,
Mhm.
can we talk about Freud's concept of libido? It's a term often thrown around.
Yeah.
But what did he really mean by it?
Libido for Freud was the very essence of
Okay.
our sexual energy.
Okay.
He envisioned it as a
Mm-hmm.
quantifiable force
Okay.
that could be increased, decreased,
Oh,
or
yeah.
even redirected.
Okay.
And understanding the flow of libido,
Mm-hmm.
how it interacts with our conscious and unconscious minds,
Right.
was key to understanding human behavior, both healthy
Yeah.
and neurotic.
So it's not just about the present or accents
Of there.
desire, but about how that desire is
Precise.
channeled, how it
Yeah.
manifests in our thoughts,
Yeah.
emotions, and actions.
Precisely. Libido for Freud
Yeah.
permeated every aspect of our being, influencing
Yeah.
our creativity, our relationships, even our dreams.
This brings us back to Freud's, assertion that sexuality is more than just a
Exactly.
physical act.
Right.
It's a fundamental psychological force
Right.
that shapes our entire experience of the world.
And its influence begins, as we've discussed,
Yeah.
long before we're consciously aware of it.
Right.
Those early infantile impulses,
Yeah.
those nascent desires
Yeah.
are already laying the foundation
Yeah.
for who we will become.
It's a powerful and somewhat daunting notion.
Right.
Our adult selves
Right.
shaped by those early experiences, even those we may not consciously remember.
It does make you wonder about the nature of
Yeah.
free will and the extent to which we are
Right.
truly masters of our own destinies.
Absolutely. And speaking of destiny,
Yeah.
how did Freud explain this process
Okay.
of finding a sexual object, that special someone who becomes the focus of our
Yeah.
romantic and sexual desires?
This is where Freud's theories delve even deeper
Yeah.
to the unconscious and become
Okay.
perhaps even more challenging to our
Okay.
modern sensibilities.
Okay.
He believed that our earliest object of desire
Mhm.
is, in fact, our mother.
Wait, are we back to the Oedipus complex again? I'm not sure I'm ready to unpack.
Not exactly. It's more nuanced than that. Remember, we're talking about the unconscious mind here.
Right.
Freud argued that the infant, during the nursing period,
Okay.
experiences a profound sense of connection and pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
through the mother's breast.
Okay.
This, he believed,
Right.
creates a primal attachment
Okay.
that serves as a template for
Right.
all future love relationships.
So it's not about like a literal desire for one's mother.
Precisely.
Okay.
It's more about the way that early bond
Yeah,
shapes our understanding of
Yeah.
love and intimacy.
precisely. It's about, that,
It's about the deep unconscious longing for that feeling of connection,
right.
of being nurtured and fulfilled.
But how does that translate into, finding a romantic partner later on in life?
Yeah.
Do we simply seek out partners?
Not necessarily in a literal sense.
Okay.
It's more about seeking out partners who
Right.
evoke those same feelings of connection and security,
Yeah,
who fulfill those
right.
deep-seated needs
Yeah.
that were first imprinted upon us
Yeah.
in infancy.
So it's not about like physical resemblance.
Exactly.
Right.
It's about those deeper emotional connections,
Right.
the way a partner makes us feel.
Exactly. And of course, this isn't and of course,
This isn't a conscious process.
right.
We're not actively
Right.
seeking out partners who remind us of our mothers.
Right.
These are unconscious patterns,
Okay.
deeply ingrained in our psyches.
But you're suggesting that those,
That was Freud's contention.
okay.
And it's not just our mothers
Yeah.
who influence this process.
Right.
Our relationships with both parents play a crucial role
Okay.
in shaping our object choices, our understanding of love,
Mm-hmm.
and our ability to form healthy,
Yeah.
fulfilling relationships.
So both parents contribute to this,
Right.
unconscious blueprint.
Yeah.
What did Freud say about the role of the father?
Freud saw the father as representing authority, competition, and the eventual need to separate from the mother
Right.
and establish our own identity.
Okay.
He believed that the father,
Right.
often seen as a rival for the mother's affection,
Yeah.
during the Oedipal phase,
Right.
plays a critical role in helping us move beyond that initial
Okay.
all-consuming bond with the mother
Right.
and towards independence and mature relationships.
It sounds like Freud is suggesting that our choices in love are never
That's a key takeaway from his work.
okay.
And it's an idea that has sparked much debate
Right.
and discussion.
Yeah.
It raises questions about the nature of free will,
Mm-hmm.
the power of the unconscious,
Right.
and the extent to which our past experiences
Right.
shape our present-day choices.
It's a lot to ponder, especially for a philosopher grappling with those,
Indeed.
big questions about,
Indeed.
agency and responsibility
Indeed.
and the nature of self.
And it's just one piece of the puzzle
Yeah.
when it comes to understanding the complex tapestry of human sexuality,
Right. Right.
according to Freud.
So we've been on quite a journey exploring Freud's
Yeah.
intricate and often provocative theories on sexuality.
Right, from those early,
Yeah.
perhaps shocking,
Yeah.
infantile impulses
Right.
to the complexities of the Oedipus complex
Mhm.
and the powerful influence of early object relations.
Yeah, we've seen how these ideas challenge,
Yeah.
conventional views of human nature and offer a unique perspective on desire, motivation,
Right.
and the unconscious forces that shape who we are.
But I'm curious,
Yeah.
what happens when these impulses, these
Right.
desires,
Right.
don't find, healthy outlets for expression? What did Freud say about those instances
Right.
where sexual development takes a less harmonious path?
That's a great question, and one that leads us into perhaps the most clinically relevant aspect of Freud's work, his theories on neuroses.
Right, neuroses.
Yeah.
Freud saw these psychological disorders,
Mm-hmm.
things like hysteria, anxiety,
Yeah,
even obsessive-compulsive disorder,
right.
as stemming from
Okay.
disturbances in psychosexual development.
So you're suggesting that these
Yeah,
mental and emotional struggles,
right.
the anxieties and compulsions that can,
Mm-hmm.
plague us can be traced back to
Yeah,
those, early stages of development,
right.
those unresolved conflicts and repressed desires we've been discussing.
That was his core belief. Freud viewed neuroses
Yeah.
as the result of unresolved conflicts,
Yeah.
repressed desires,
Yeah.
and fixations stemming from those early psychosexual stages, those unresolved
Right.
issues from our childhood.
Yeah.
Those repressed desires and anxieties can bubble to the surface
Uh-huh.
and manifest as psychological symptoms.
It's like those early experiences,
Yeah.
those unconscious conflicts are trying to,
Yeah,
find a voice,
exactly.
expressing themselves through these often debilitating symptoms.
And often those symptoms are symbolic representations of those
Yeah.
underlying conflicts. They're a way for the unconscious mind to communicate its distress,
Yeah.
to seek some form of resolution.
So it's not just about the symptoms themselves.
Precisely. It's about understanding the deeper meaning. Okay. The symbolic language of the unconscious that lies beneath.
Precisely. And this is one of Freud's
Yeah.
most revolutionary contributions to psychology, bringing the unconscious mind
Absolutely.
into the realm of
Right.
scientific inquiry
Yeah.
and recognizing its profound influence on our
Right.
thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. For a philosopher, this idea of the unconscious,
Yeah.
this hidden realm of desires and motivations
Right.
driving our actions,
Right,
has profound implications. It raises questions about...
It does.
Yeah.
It does challenge some fundamental assumptions about
Right.
human agency and responsibility.
Absolutely. But if the root of these neuroses
Yeah.
lies in those,
Right.
early childhood experiences,
Right.
those often forgotten events
Yeah.
and unconscious conflicts,
Mm-hmm.
how could we possibly go back and fix things?
That's where Freud introduced the revolutionary practice of psychoanalysis,
Okay,
a therapeutic approach
okay,
aiming to uncover those unconscious conflicts,
right,
to bring them into the light of conscious awareness so they can be processed
okay.
and resolved.
So it's about talking then.
Precisely.
Okay.
Through techniques like free association,
Yeah.
dream analysis,
Mhm.
and the interpretation of transference.
Right.
The analyst helps the patient uncover those repressed memories,
Mm.
desires,
Yeah.
and anxieties that are fueling their neurotic symptoms.
It sounds like a challenging process.
It's not always easy,
Right.
but for Freud, it was the key to unlocking true
Okay.
mental and emotional freedom. By understanding the roots of our neuroses,
Yeah.
by bringing those unconscious conflicts
Yeah.
into the light of day, we can begin to heal,
Right.
to grow,
Yeah.
and to live more fulfilling lives.
It's a powerful idea.
Yeah.
That by, facing those darker aspects of ourselves, by delving into those,
Yeah,
uncomfortable truths about our past,
right.
we can ultimately find greater peace and wholeness.
It challenges us to embrace
Right.
the full complexity of human nature,
Yeah.
to acknowledge both the light and shadow within ourselves.
And this brings us back to that
Yeah.
concept of sublimation.
Right,
That's
sublimation.
just discussed earlier.
Freud saw it as a way of channeling those
Yeah.
potentially destructive impulses into
Right.
more socially acceptable
Yeah.
and even creative outlets.
So instead of those impulses,
Exactly.
leading to neuroses or those variations
All right.
we talked about,
Yeah,
they can become a source of strength,
exactly.
a driving force.
And I think that's truly a hopeful message, that
Oh.
even those aspects of ourselves that we might
Yeah.
fear or shame can be transformed into something positive,
Right.
something that contributes to our own growth
Yeah.
and the betterment of the world.
It's a beautiful and inspiring idea. It suggests that,
Yeah.
our greatest strengths
Mm-hmm.
might actually arise from
Yeah.
those very impulses we've been taught to, repress or deny.
It's a reminder that human nature is
Yeah.
a complex
Right.
and multifaceted tapestry,
Yeah.
and that true growth
Yeah.
involves integrating
Yeah.
all aspects of ourselves,
Okay.
both the light
Yeah.
and the shadow.
Well, we've certainly covered
Yeah.
a vast and intricate terrain
We have,
in this deep dive into
Yeah.
Freud's theories on sexuality.
from those early infantile impulses
Right.
to the complexities of the Oedipus complex
Mm-hmm.
and the potential for sublimation,
Yeah.
we've explored how Freud's ideas offer
Right.
a unique lens through which to understand human nature
Yeah.
and the often unconscious forces
Right.
that shape our lives.
It's been a fascinating and thought-provoking journey, and I'm sure our philosopher listener
Indeed.
has been given much to ponder.
Freud's work,
Yeah.
whether you agree with it or not,
Hey.
compels us to ask these fundamental questions
Yeah.
about what it means to be human,
Right.
about the nature of desire, morality,
Yeah.
and the forces that shape our lives.
And on that note, we'll leave you to continue your own, deep dive into the world of Freudian thought. Thanks for joining us on this exploration, and be sure to subscribe for more fascinating deep dives into the ideas that shape our world.